So have you ever had a moment of panic? A moment where your heart is beating loud and fast? A moment where your sane, rational, calm brain has literally and figuratively been hijacked by your primitive brain in a state commonly known as fight, flight, or freeze? Well, that happened to me. It was 1995, and at the time, I was a primetime television anchor for a South African station, and we were broadcasting the Miss World pageant live. And my job was to introduce it and provide commentary. So there I am, very relaxed, 30 seconds to air, and all of a sudden, my teleprompter goes black. 30 seconds to air. My heart is pounding. I start to panic. You know, somebody recently described that feeling to me like being in a dark tunnel that you can't get out of. It was the most panic-struck feeling. I was frozen. And it's now 20 seconds to air. And it's now 19 seconds to air, and 18, 17, 16, 15. I am about to go live on national television, hundreds of thousands of people, and make a complete fool of myself. And I don't know why or how, but in that moment, I started to think about my little girls. They were having a joint birthday party. They were turning 2 and 5, and I started thinking about the celebration the next day and how adorable they were that morning. And all of a sudden, I felt this calm come over me. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I'm live on air, and I'm talking about the Miss World pageant, and I'm talking about the fact that for the 4th year in a row, it was held at Sun City, which is an entertainment center in South Africa. I talk about the fact that this year it's less about bathing suits and ball gowns, and more about accomplishments and personality, and how Aishwarya Rai, the former Miss World from India, is going to be crowning the winner. And there's this round of applause from the control room, and I sit there stunned. What had happened? How had I got over that moment? And more importantly, how could I prevent never having that sense of panic again? It was a defining moment. Through many years, I've done lots of research, and I found that while neuroscience backs up what had happened, there was very little to practically help. So what I bring to you today are 4 practices, and I call these practices owning your confidence, because it stops anyone and anything ever taking your confidence away. Now, the first practice that I share with you is to feel good about yourself. You see, what I'd inadvertently done in that moment was, by thinking about my daughters and thinking about something that brought me joy, I had lit up that neural pathway. So we know the brain is elastic, and if somebody has a traumatic incident, a trigger can trigger a traumatic thought or experience. Well, so can a pleasant thought. And what I had done was lit up a neural pathway that made me feel comfortable and confident. And from that moment, I started to develop a library of these things, and I called it your positive emotional memory database. And what that is a whole library of positive past experiences that I could then access whenever I was feeling that moment of panic. So think for a moment, what would that be for you? What would be on your library, on your positive emotional memory database that you could access in that moment? So for me, it was meeting Nelson Mandela when I opened the SOS Children's Villages with him. It was being on the John Oliver show. How many of you have watched comedian John Oliver? He's very funny, and he used my CNN segments to talk about the corruption of FIFA. A proud moment indeed. And then, of course, my little girls, who are now big girls. I always say when they were little, they were on my positive emotional memory database. When they were teenagers, I tried to erase them. Now they're back. But that's your positive emotional memory database, something that I've been able to access. I used it when I was interviewing Anthony Hopkins. So there I am, okay, about to walk into this interview, and Anthony Hopkins, very famous actor, and who am I to interview somebody like him? And interestingly enough, the journalist who had just walked out of the interview was from France, and she said, "Oh, Mr. Hopkins was in such a bad mood. My interview was so shit." And I thought, I don't want to have a sheet interview. So I did what I'm asking you to do. I accessed my positive past memory, things that validate me, moments of triumph for me. And by the time I walked into that interview, I was, "So, Mr. Hopkins, Matthew McConaughey says you are one of the most disciplined actors he's ever worked with. Are you?" And he said, "Yes." And we had a wonderful conversation. And at the end, he actually got up and hugged me. Now, conversely, when I was interviewing Richard Gere, I walked in feeling very comfortable. Richard Gere, I'm about to do the interview. I say, "I understand you're doing another movie with Julia Roberts." It was Runaway Bride. He looked at me and said, "Who told you that?" And I suddenly felt myself become less than. He's the big star. Who am I to ask him? And when I look back at that tape, I wasn't that confident, accomplished self because I'd forgotten to access my positive past memories. I'd forgotten to allow myself to say, "I am," as John Kehoe, the author says, "a culmination of my success," and to let success vibrate within you. You see, positive thought very often is like Teflon, whereas negative thought is like Velcro. So I ask you to think about creating new neural pathways in your brain. And the thing about this is you can't suddenly say, "I'm about to give a presentation, I'm about to go live on air. What did that Nadia Bilchik say about positive emotional memory database? Let me think. No. I'm asking you to develop this, to grow it from today, the 23rd of February. I want you to say to yourself, from now on, every time I have a positive past experience or a positive current experience, I will commit it to memory. So when I need to access it in those moments, it's readily available." The second practice in practices is to show genuine interest. You see, owning your confidence isn't only about you coming across as polished and poised. It's about validating others. It's about how you make other people feel. Have you ever had a conversation with someone and you see that wonderful gleam in their eyes? They've been understood by you, right? That gives you confidence. I was in the CNN newsroom recently, and I was chatting to a colleague about the fact that she was getting married, and she said she was having 2 weddings, one in Italy, where one side of the family's from, and one in India, where her husband's family's from, her soon-to-be husband. And we started chatting, and I asked her questions, open-ended questions. What are you going to wear? How do the families get on? I found myself maybe saying 4 sentences the entire time, and at the end she said, "Nadia, that was one of the best conversations I've had in years." You see, Dale Carnegie put it so well. He said, people who talk about you are brilliant conversationalists, whereas people who talk about others are gossips, and people who talk about themselves are bores. Bill Nye, the science guy, always says, everyone you meet knows something that you don't. Go into conversations as if you have something to learn. Show genuine interest. Through my years as a journalist, I've come up with a framework that I find very useful, and that is that everybody has 3 phases of their lives. They all have a past, and a... There are many questions you can ask people about their past, generic ones like where did you grow up, where did you go to school, but more specific ones you can ask questions like, is there anything memorable that a parent or a grandparent taught you that stays with you today? One of my favorite questions about your current reality or your present is, what is your biggest challenge? Now, that doesn't mean you go up to a complete stranger and say, hello, what's causing you the most pain? That means genuinely, what's your biggest challenge? And then you can ask people a myriad of questions about their future. Where are you going to be in 5 years' time? Any vacations planned? But if you always have that framework of past, present, and future, and you show genuine, concerned interest, it induces such confidence in you, and it gives such pleasure to the other. I love what Honoré Balzac said. He is a French playwright. He says, there is no greater impediment to getting on well with other people than being ill at ease with yourself. And that wonderful ability to just listen while you are comfortable and put yourself aside while you just listen and show genuine interest is probably one of the most overlooked competencies of really owning your confidence. The third practice is that of relaxing. Now, you want to relax both mentally and physically. So mentally, Alvin Toffler, the author, said, the less you need something, the more power you have. Any job interview or any review or any encounter with someone you perceive to have more power than you, you often put so much pressure on yourself. This is so important. This minute matters so much. It does, but what's the worst that can happen? Not one person in this auditorium today has not overcome some obstacle or some imperfection, and you've survived. So often we tell ourselves it's the most important thing, and you know what? It's not. And then there are some physical ways of relaxing. Now, my first one is before a presentation or before you go live on air or a difficult or high-stakes interview, I want you to say this after me. Ham-mam-mam. Just try it. Ham-mam-mam. I know you're feeling a bit self-conscious. You're in the dark. No one can see you. Ham-mam-mam. Ham-mam-mam. Try it with the vowel sound E. Hem-mem-mem. Hem-mem-mem. Do you know what that does? That warms your voice so you sound confident. Because when you sound squeaky and you're nervous, you sound like that, as opposed to I'm sounding confident and relaxed. Ham-mam-mam. Hem-mem-mem. Him-mim. Hom-mom. Ham-mom. Try that. Hem-mem, hem-mim, him-mim, hom-mom, hom-mom. Very well done. The second thing is to contract your whole body. Squeeze it, squeeze it, squeeze it, and release it. Isn't that good? Now, my third thing is you have to stand up. So for this one, before I'm giving a big presentation or going live on air, I do this preferably when no one can see me. I am making an exception today. So what I do is I first remember, focus on that positive past memory, and then don't get a fright and don't do anything yet. I take a deep breath in, and then I go 1, 2, 3, and it really works. Now you're going to do it on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, Don't you feel better already? Take a seat. My fourth practice is to engage with energy, excitement, and enthusiasm. And that is the difference between, hello, I'm so delighted to be here today, and hello, I'm so delighted to be here today. It's the difference between, thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for your time. It's what I'm saying, but also how I'm saying it. It's the verbal, the words you use, and the non-verbal, energy, eye contact. You know, when you give a presentation and you show an audience your palms, what you're really saying is, look, I come in peace because I can't possibly be holding a... Correct, no weapons, I come in peace. The other thing we say, which is glorious, air your armpits. Did you know that the more space you take up, the more comfortable you look? If you walk, walk with purpose. If you stand, stand grounded. It's the verbal and the non-verbal. It's the what and the how. It's like a rocket launch. Because in a rocket launch, we have the payload and we have the propulsion. We have the payload and we have the propulsion. In case you're wondering, no, this does not actually work. This is just a cue. Okay, payload and propulsion, the what and the how. If you had a perfect payload and you had faulty propulsion, 5, 4, 3, 2, either wouldn't take off or it would dive. The same is true of all our communication. If you want to own your confidence, you've got to think what, but equally you've got to think how. Energy, eye contact, effective visuals, body language. So, ladies and gentlemen, if ideas are worth spreading, they are certainly worth remembering. So I've created an acronym to help you remember this. It's lighting the fire. The first thing is to feel good about yourself, to develop that positive emotional memory database to create new neural pathways. So when you're thinking positive thoughts, it changes you physically, mentally, and it gives you that deep sense of relaxation. To show genuine interest, to relax both mentally and physically, and finally, to engage with energy and enthusiasm. As you continue your journey, I really hope that you find these practices as useful as I have. And if you ever find yourself having a moment like I did in 1995, I hope you can access your inner fire. Thank you very much.